because I go to work for the common good. But enough about me. Let's talk about you, because that's what this election is about. It's about your future. It's about your family. And Vice President Harris knows that. She too grew up in a middle-class family. She too goes to work every day, making sure families can not just get by, but get ahead. We believe in the promise of America, in those values I learned in Nebraska, and we're ready to fight for them. Because as Kamala Harris says, when we fight, we win.
There you have it. With Vice President Harris having a plethora of A-list political talent to choose from, the chemistry between Harris and Walz may have been Walz's ultimate advantage. NBC News reporting this, quote, ultimately, Harris had very strong chemistry with Walz when they met Sunday at her residence. That's according to 4 sources familiar with the selection process, playing a key role in her decision because it was clearer with him than with the other top contenders. Harris also appreciates how different Walz is from her in terms of the contrast he can provide, sources said. A 5th source close to the process puts it like this, quote, is this someone who you would want to have lunch with every week for 4 years? But Harris's decision today goes beyond just finding a trusted partner in Walz. The governor's devastating takedown of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance as being plain old weird has gained serious traction in the party over the last few weeks. Watch.
These are weird people on the other side. They want to take books away. They want to be in your exam room. These are weird ideas. Listen to the guy. He's talking about Hannibal Lecter and shocking sharks and just whatever crazy thing pops into his mind. And I thought we just give him way too much credit. And I think one of the things is when you just ratchet down some of the, the scariness or whatever and just name it what it is. I got to tell you, Jake, my observation on this is, have you ever seen the guy laugh? That seems very weird to me that an adult can go through 6.5 years of being in the public eye. If he has laughed, it's at someone, not with someone. That is weird behavior. And I don't think you call it anything else. They're awkward, and it stems from who's asking for this crazy stuff? Who's asking to raise the price of insulin? Who's asking to get rid of birth control? Who's sitting in a bar in Racine, Wisconsin saying, what we really need? We need to ban Animal Farm. Nobody is.
Walz's role as a super effective messenger for Democrats is backed up by a very long resume that many hope will help the ticket appeal to a wide swath of voters. He's a veteran, he's a gun owner, a plain-spoken former high school teacher who spent years in Congress representing a rural district that went for Donald Trump in 2016. Who, as governor, passed a slew of top Democratic priorities, things like paid family leave, background checks for gun owners, and enshrining the right to an abortion in the state constitution. In the next hour, Walz and Harris will appear for the first time together as a ticket at a rally in Philadelphia. We'll bring it to you live as soon as it happens. NBC News correspondent Yamiche Alcindor is in Philadelphia for us ahead of tonight's rally. Also joining us, former U.S. Senator and co-host of MSNBC's How to Win 2024 podcast, Claire McCaskill's here with us at the table, Democratic strategist, professor at Columbia University, MSNBC political analyst Basil Smikle's here, plus chief political columnist, host of the podcast In Politic for Puck, MSNBC national affairs analyst John Heilman. I know all of you are brimming with reporting on how this came to be and what happens next. I start with you and yours, Yamiche.
Well, I wanted to start by telling you about sort of the reporting that I've been doing on how we came to the decision, to see the decision that Tim Walz is now the running mate that Vice President Harris has settled on. And it was that on Sunday, she had 3 finalists. It was Mark Kelly, the senator from Arizona, Josh Shapiro, the governor of the state that I'm standing in, Pennsylvania, and Tim Walz, who is, of course, the governor of Minnesota. When you start with Mark Kelly, I was told that he was someone who was seen as not supportive enough of President Biden in the weeks when people were trying to push him out of the election, trying to get him to drop out, that Mark Kelly was sort of neutral, and that was seen as not loyal enough. It was also brought up to me that he was not seen as loyal enough when it came to immigration policy, and that overall in the Biden administration, he was not seen as somebody, as a senator who was helpful in passing the legislation that they wanted to pass. Then you get to Josh Shapiro. There were conversations about whether or not his stance when it comes to the war between Israel and Hamas might anger protesters even more than they already are. This issue did not sink him, I was told, but it was a conversation around whether or not him giving a speech at the DNC as the running mate, whether or not that would really anger the base of the party. And then you get to Tim Walz, I was told that this was really a gut decision, that she's had a conversation with him, felt the chemistry, and that she ultimately settled on the fact that he is somebody that she could trust, not just as a campaign running mate, but as someone, if she is to govern with him, if there's a sort of difference between the vice president, if there's a vice president Wallace and a president Harris, that he would be someone who wouldn't be leaking to the press, he wouldn't be someone who would be complaining to staff, and whatever the decision was, that he would be able and feel comfortable being led by a woman, a Black and South Asian woman as president, if they were to make it to the White House. So there was really a lot of going on here. And the thing that one source told me was, this was kind of like picking a husband. None of them are perfect, but this was someone that she felt was the best of that. And I will say, I have to note, my husband is perfect. He's an Eagles fan. But in this instance, that's what they were thinking.
I'm going to stay far away from the husband stuff. Claire McCaskill, I know you've been talking to folks as well. What do you understand about how this decision, which it is stunning that in the seconds after it was announced, you had Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Joe Manchin heaping praise upon Vice President Harris's pick of Tim Walz.
Well, I can say with a great deal of confidence, I think this did boil down to just a couple of things. Number one being, is this going to be the kind of communicator and partner that can hang out with her for a long time in a lot of stressful situations, be supportive, be strong, be persuasive? And I think everybody needs to remember, honestly, Nicolle, his people called us to be on our podcast a few weeks ago, and I kind of was dismissive of it. I wasn't that familiar with Tim Walz, and I kind of thought, God, the guy's kind of thirsty. He's, popping up now and immediately when this talk of who the vice president's going to be to get on this podcast. But I got to tell you, that podcast converted me. He is so real, so genuine, speaks so plainly. He screams anti-elite. He screams, I am not an Ivy Leaguer. He screams mac and cheese and a trip to the hardware store. I can't imagine him ever walking in a room where he saw anybody as a stranger. I think the reason all those children were hugging him is because he gives you that impression that he wants to be hugged. He's a huggable guy. And I think it was that chemistry that really made the difference. And the other thing I really think made a difference was the difference in their resumes. Josh Shapiro's resume is not that different than Kamala Harris's. Prosecutor, AG, then governor, prosecutor, AG, then senator, whereas Tim Walz brings a lot more to the table. Football coach, and I might add, he was the coach of the football team, the defensive coordinator, the year they won the state championship. In that same year, he volunteered to be the faculty advisor for a group of kids that wanted to form a club that was called the Alliance Between Gay and Straight Kids. So, that's stuff that is really good stuff. And his resume was different. And I think in the long run, she saw that as something that would help the campaign more than a resume that was very similar to hers.
I love all this. I too did a deep dive today, and these are some of my favorite things that he said, John Heilman. This is him explaining the weird label, which stuck like crazy glue onto the Trump-Vance ticket. This is Governor Walz on the podcast Pod Save America.
This weird thing is not an insult. It's an observation. And people saying, well, Governor Walz came up with this. No, people are telling me this. My Republican friends are telling me this. Because when you look at it this way, who's asking for some of this stuff? Who's asking for health care to be taken away? Who's asking for birth control to be taken away? Who's asking? You picture some guys, they always do the guy's sitting in Racine, Wisconsin in the bar, what's really concerning them? I damn sure guarantee you it's not banning Animal Farm. They're talking about, God, it's too damn expensive to pay for child care, or I'd like to do this. So I think the thing is that this spell, and you listen to him, there's nothing there. And it opens up a huge space if you can shrink the message, and then really start to focus on it. I want people to be very clear. I'm not talking about Republicans being weird. I'm talking about that dude. Just my point on this, he's making fun of Kamala Harris laughing. I got a bet out there, and he'll never collect on it. He will not laugh in public. He's incapable of it. And that's just strange.
I think people were hungry to see Trump brought down to size. I think we, and I mean the collective we, right? The pro-democracy coalition, which is the Democratic Party and all the stray cats and dogs like myself who have clung onto it in hopes of Trump not serving a second term, have in our fear of what he's saying out loud, which is certainly legitimate. It is the Project 2025 agenda. It is turning DOJ into a personal political police force. It is taking the Supreme Court's newfound total immunity for official acts and doing unthinkable things. I mean, since that decision, no one has talked about what Joe Biden or potential President Kamala Harris would do with absolute immunity. No one. You know, everyone. Single story, not in this news organization, not at Fox News. No one's worried about what Joe Biden would do with absolute immunity. It's what Trump would do because of what Trump tried to do in his first presidency. But Wallace has a totally different frame around Trump, and it's to, in his words, quote, shrink him. It's fascinating.
Yeah, and I think, you know, you have to, anybody who wonders whether this guy is going to be a good candidate on the national stage, he's just run a campaign. I mean, he ran a campaign for this office, and I say that with admiration. You know, Claire McCaskill just said, how many people do you think in Democratic politics Claire McCaskill would say, I've never really heard of that guy a couple weeks ago. And he has a very significant resume. We've seen it now, what his resume is, both in and out of government. You know, six-term member of the House, governor of Minnesota. I'm not demeaning it to say that he had not broken through. People knew who Josh Shapiro was. People knew who Andy Beshear was. People knew who a lot of these people on the short list were. He was 3 weeks ago unknown to all but maybe the top 0.1% of the political class. People had not, and he came out and did Claire McCaskill's podcast and Pod Save America. He came on this network a lot. He went on CNN. He went all over the place and was campaigned as well for the job of vice president as Kamala Harris has campaigned so far for the job of president since she's been the nominee, flawlessly, you know. So you have to give the guy some credit there. And I will say, you know, that you can't take this out of the context in which it exists, which is the context of a Democratic Party that's just been through hell before Vice President Harris became the nominee. All drama, more drama than you would want, any party would want, in 6 election cycles. They had it in 6 weeks, right? Yeah. And you look across the aisle and you see J.D. Vance, not just as a target, but as a cautionary tale. You know, you have been through this in politics, what it is to not pick a do no harm candidate, to pick a candidate who's a wild, bold pick, you know. It turns out that sometimes doesn't work out so well for you. And so in this moment, when Democrats do not want, they want a no drama pick. They do not want some outside the box thinking here. We're pretty far outside the box already in terms of how Kamala Harris became the nominee. They wanted they wanted a unity candidate that all wings of the party could agree on. She met that. That's going to keep the enthusiasm high. They understand how important that is. There's not going to, this is any chance there's going to be any upheaval in Chicago, now gone. Love fest guaranteed. And they know they can't, in 91 days, they don't have much time, right? And to win this election, you have a very short number of news cycles. You got to keep winning news cycles, and you have to keep doing a lot of other things. But you can't have some giant screw up that consumes 10 days of your campaign, because you'll never recover from that. This guarantees that she will not have that. In addition to all of the vernacular you're talking about, where this guy does not read like the Squad. He may be progressive, but he doesn't read like far left. What he reads as is, you know, he reads this as what Claire said, you know, he reads as a Rotarian, and a funny Rotarian. In fact, guy you really want to have a guy you really would be really happy to have a cheeseburger with, because he has some really funny things to say about that weirdo Donald Trump.
Funny and accurate. I also think he's unapologetic.
Funny things usually are accurate.
Yeah, that's true.
That's like the truth.
Oh my God, we have to get to the comedian. I think it was the Comedians for Harris call where it's not in this block, but stick a pin in that. We're going to get to funny. I want to get to his unapologetic defense of his record. This is an interview with Jake Tapper.
Do you think your record is an asset to the ticket, or would it risk fueling Trump's attacks as you being a big government liberal?
What a monster. Kids are eating and having full bellies so they can go learn, and women are making their own health care decisions, and we're a top 5 business state, and We also rank in the top 3 of happiness. Look, they're going to label whatever they're going to label. He's going to roll it out, mispronounce names, to try and make the case. The fact of the matter is, where you see the policies that Vice President Harris was a part of making, Democratic governors across the country executed those policies, and quality of life is higher, the economies are better, all of those things. Educational attainment is better. So, yeah, my kids are going to eat here, and you're going to have a chance to go to college, and you're going to have an opportunity to live where we're working on reducing carbon emissions. Oh, and by the way, you're going to have personal incomes that are higher, and you're going to have health insurance. So if that's where they want to label me, I'm more than happy to take the label.
So he had me at what a monster. I mean, this has been absent for really 8 years in the politics of Trumpism. Like, you want to turn it on me? Oh, yes, what a monster I am. Feeding kids, educating them, and, oh, by the way, top 5 states in the country for the economy.
There's a lot I'm going to say about this pick, but let me first talk about the Kamala Harris campaign and how smart they were and how shrewd they were in making this choice. Because Tim Walz represents so much of what, as you said, we haven't been hearing in the last several years, certainly coming from the right. And if there's something that you might miss about Joe Biden not being on the ticket, this man has it. Because as Claire talked about somebody that you might want to hug, he has said, it's important to put the glasses on. He has said the way out of all of this is through grace and optimism. What he's talking about there is empathy. That kind of empathy for all Americans, and even in the clip that you played, he's saying, look, it's not just about being far left, it's about making good policy. You can label it anything you want, but the reality is he's saying, I care about children and I care about families, thus free breakfast and lunch. He's about restorative justice and restoring rights to the formerly incarcerated. And by the way, adding on to that, being able to bring college into prisons. He's a social studies teacher, for crying out loud, at a time when folks are trying to ban books and trying to take history out of our K-12 classrooms. So all of these things, all of these components really does stand up really well against the Trump campaign, creating that split screen, creating that juxtaposition at every single turn. And another very quick point. Since 2016, but certainly since 2020, we've talked about permission structures. Donald Trump loves the permission structure, particularly when it comes to African-American votes. He puts Amber Rose up there and so on and so forth. What's so great about this pick, and because of the state that Wallace represents and the kind of impact he'll have, Donald Trump is running out of permission structures to add to his campaign. Campaigns are additive. He hasn't been able to do that. That's why he sounds the way he does. That's why he's flailing in the way that he is, because there is no additive effect to the J.D. Pick Vance or any other thing that he's said or done. So he's running out of those permission structures to be able to get him into communities. And what this pick does is it seals off more of those avenues and pathways. Brilliant pick, smart pick for the Harris team.
We also, I've got a growing list of things to talk about. You sat in that chair not too long ago, and I mean, you talked about the Democratic Party's been there. I think everyone felt terrible. I haven't seen you feel this good and optimistic.
It's great. It's like Mr. Giggles.
I want whatever's in his cup. Yamiche, I want to come back to you on something that I think your reporting is getting at in the chemistry reporting that you've done. He makes people feel good. You watch him, and whether you sort of come to this as a lifelong liberal or as a veteran. I got an email today from a veteran who said he brought legislation to then Congressman Wallace, who co-sponsored it. Obama signed it into law, really changing and improving the quality of life for veterans, especially those suffering from mental health tragedies after their service and their time. You see every pocket, not just of the Democratic Party in Joe Manchin and AOC, out with resounding support for him, but Adam Kinzinger with an equally glowing endorsement of this selection. He clearly makes people feel good. And I wonder if there's something that sort of basic about this election.
Well, that definitely factored into this decision. When they talked about executive sort of experience. They wanted to just not only focus on sort of him having been a governor, but what he did while he was governor. And I was quickly sent a list of things that the Harris campaign thought were things that added to his resume that they really liked and that appealed to the vice president specifically. So I'll just run through some of them. There's the fact that he passed the tax credit for Minnesota. There's the fact that they have paid family leave, that he codified Roe v. Wade so there's access to abortion in that state, that he ensured universal school lunch so that children will be able to have lunch throughout the state. They were pointing to those things as progressive things, but also as things that they see are really part of the democracy argument that they're making. Because one of the things that the vice president has been talking about is sort of our vision, meaning Democrats' vision of America versus Republicans' visions of America. And there are some people who said, well, is she like turning away from the idea of democracy and sort of former President Trump being a threat to democracy? And I was told by sources close to her, no. In fact, the idea of a working democracy is that women have control over their bodies, that children can be fed at their schools, that you can have paid family leave so that when a woman has a baby, she can take off and not lose her home and not be able to sort of have to survive and scramble on what she's going to do to feed that baby. So their idea is that Tim Walz is really an extension of what the democracy should be looking like, and that Donald Trump is really what the democracy should not look like his vision for it. Nicolle.
So as Yamiche is not losing any of her cool calm there, the event in Philadelphia is getting underway, and I can feel the ketchup heading to the wall when I look at the massive crowds there in Philadelphia in a key state. We expect Governor Shapiro to speak at this event as well. We will turn into that as soon as some of those speeches get underway. Yamiche Alcindor, thank you for your reporting and for starting us off. Everyone else sticks around when we come back. Someone who worked alongside Tim Walz for nearly 20 years in both Congress and in the state of Minnesota. Friend and colleague Keith Ellison is our next guest. Plus, why young people are so completely fired up over this pick, as fired up as our friend Basil here, over the selection of Governor Wallace. Congressman Maxwell Frost, the youngest lawmaker in Washington, D.C., will be here on why he's all in on this new ticket. And in the next hour, we will go back live to Philadelphia for Vice President Kamala Harris's big campaign rally with her brand new partner and running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. We'll bring it to you when it begins. After that, I'll join Rachel Maddow and all of our primetime friends and team for special coverage about how this pick shakes things up with just 91 days left to go until Election Day in America. Much more to come. Don't go anywhere.
Let's get started. Bill, where's your mask?
I really tried sleeping with it, everybody. Now I sleep with Inspire.
Inspire? No mask? No clothes?
Just sleep.
Learn more and view important safety information at inspiresleep.com.
Oh, man, I love a good hotel breakfast.
Same.
Yeah, so close to the stadium. I managed to get the last room for $190.
I booked the last room a week ago.
I booked yesterday. One night, $140.
What?
How?
Some sites panic you into booking their last room, but they don't have all the availability. Instead, use Trivago. Trivago compares hotel prices from hundreds of sites, so you can save up to $50 a night.
Well, at least I got the last ticket to the game.
So did I.
Hotel Trivago.
You need T-Mobile home internet with 5G.
Wait, T-Mobile has home internet?
What a feeling to have T-Mobile now.
When the internet said Red Lobster's going away, your boy Flavor Flav said, not today. Crab Fest is here, boy, and they got 2 flavors, roasted garlic and new Cajun butter. When you gotta have seafood, you gotta have Red Lobster.
If you have Graves' disease and blurry vision, you need clear answers. People with Graves could also get thyroid eye disease, or TED, which may need a different doctor. Find a TED eye specialist at isitted.com.
We're excited to do business with you, but before we sign, I gotta ask.
Sure, anything.
We searched you online, and maybe you can explain this?
Can't believe that garbage is still coming in. That is so false.
Frustrated with your online search results? Call Reputation Defender today to join tens of thousands who've improved their online reputation. Get your free reputation report card at reputationdefender.com or call 1-877-866-8555.
This bakery needs new equipment fast to keep up with demand. So they're going to On Deck, the online lender that makes it easy to choose your loan and, if approved, get funds as soon as the same day. Your loan is on deck.
Want the effects of Viagra, but faster? Meet Rose Sparks. They contain sildenafil and tadalafil, but Sparks dissolve under the tongue. Dissolvables work faster than old school pills. Connect with a medical provider at ro.co/sparks.
Pod's biggest sale of the summer is extended. Save up to 25% on moving and storage until August 12th. And see why Pods has been trusted with over 6 million moves. But don't wait. Use promo code BIG25 to save. Visit pods.com today.
Okay, everyone. Our mission is to provide complete balanced nutrition for strength and energy.
Ensure with 27 vitamins and minerals, nutrients for immune health, and Ensure Complete with 30 grams of protein.
Democracy is egalitarian, which means it's for everyone. It means it demands the best of us. It means it's not a spectator sport, but it also, I think, is a divinely inspired gift of our forefathers to show us that we can lead ourselves.
Tim Walz is wonderful. And she had many good choices among the 6 and certainly among the 2. I'm a big fan of Governor Shapiro. Tim Walz, I know very well. Let's say he served in the House. To characterize him as left is so unreal. It's just not what the question. He's right down the middle. He's a Heartland of America Democrat. And he was the chair of our Veterans Affairs Committee. And I don't want anybody to forget that, because he made tremendous, tremendous gains for our veterans. Working with our folks on the Appropriations Committee and with the Speaker, we made more progress than had ever been made in the history of our country since the GI Bill under his leadership. 25 years in the National Guard, longest serving non-commissioned officer ever served in the Congress of the United States. So he brings the security credential, he brings the rural credential, and he will do well in Moral America.
That was former Speaker Nancy Pelosi, quite possibly the most powerful person in American politics today, as the news broke this morning about Vice President Kamala Harris's selection of Wallace as her running mate. Joining our coverage, Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison. He has worked alongside Tim Walz for nearly 20 years, first in Congress, and then they were elected into statewide office together in 2018. It's so great to have you here. For anyone who didn't know who Governor Walz was 3 weeks ago, tell us what you've known for decades.
Well, he is an accessible guy. He has a wonderful sense of humor. He's a listener. He doesn't think that he knows everything. He's one of those who is very smart, but he's smart enough to know that consulting with people who have, some experience and some background is a good thing to do. He is a informal fellow. Tim Walz can put on a camo hat and a buffalo plaid shirt, and nobody would blink an eye, because it's just who he is. He is a small town guy. He's from small town Nebraska, came to Minnesota, did a wonderful job. But I can tell you, you can go to the most urban parts of Minneapolis, and he relates well to everybody. So I think this is a very smart pick, because it's not a pick that says, let's just try to win this state or that state. It's a pick that says we're going to win every state.
Yeah.
We're going to be competitive in every state. So I think it's a very sharp pick.
Yeah, I mean, the smarter political minds here have already been carving up not just states, but counties within states, and saying you can send him here, you can send him there. But I like what you're saying. He helps you win over the country. And I have this theory that maybe what the vice president is trying to do is getting back to a politics where the ticket that really inspired people and made them feel better is as central to anything as landing these blows as he's done so effectively on Trump and Vance. Just talk about how he balances sort of the politics of feeling better and feeling good and feeling optimistic with being what he has clearly shown himself to be over the last 2 weeks, an effective sort of campaign attack dog.
Well, because he is a person who carries a certain sense of joy, he's funny. And even when he's getting on your case, like he's been, you know, getting after the Republicans, he does it with humor. This whole thing about calling them weird, I mean, it's very him. It's authentic. It's funny, and it's true. So, I mean, it landed, right?
Yeah.
So that he has a certain sense of joy. He loves kids. You know, he is one who does not mind. He used to be the hall monitor when he was an educator. He was a football coach. I mean, he is that guy who has that approachability. And I think Americans are really going to like him. And I'm going to tell you one more thing you might not have heard yet. You're going to like his wife, too. Gwen is a queen. She's a wonderful woman. And I just think the Walleses are going to take America by storm because they're genuine, decent, caring people.
So, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned that. I mean, this is the statement, this is a reporting we have from Josh Shapiro, who is reported to have been, you know, maybe the other finalist for this pick. And he just put out this statement. Lori and I consider Tim and Gwen to be good friends of ours. We're excited for them and for the country to get to know the great people we know them to be. They instantly had the endorsements and the enthusiasm from AOC and Joe Manchin. Adam Kinzinger heaped on praise. I got a note from a veteran who'd worked with him in Congress in passing and crafting legislation to help veterans, particularly those suffering from mental health issues after their service.
Right.
Just talk about sort of the policy swath he's carved out.
Well, he's been an amazingly effective policy leader. I mean, just take education for a minute. He and Peggy Flanagan, our lieutenant governor, helped make the most substantial investments in Minnesota education in a generation. They made it so that kids can have lunch and breakfast at school for free, which is very important. And Tim Walz knows that because he actually taught kids in school, so he knows how hard it is to learn on an empty stomach. You know, and the other thing he did is made investments on mental health for kids. A lot of our kids go to school with anxiety, depression, and they need someone there, and he made those investments to make sure that we could get there. The other thing is he's one who believes in our liberties. I mean, when Tim Walz puts on that flag pin and wears his military, his veterans background, in his mind, he is protecting the freedoms of our country, among them reproductive freedom. And in his mind, it's a pragmatic matter that adults should make their own healthcare decisions, regardless of sex, you know, and he's strong on that point of view. He helped us also ban the cruel and outdated practice of conversion therapy, so he doesn't take to our LGBTQ community being bullied. Also public health, he's been great on the issue of public health, whether it's driving or protecting kids from tobacco or whatever it is. He has been an inclusive leader. He's also not afraid to walk a picket line. He's a labor guy. He is a union member himself. He doesn't just support unions. He is a member of a union and believes in that, and help to make sure that we establish paid leave and insured paid sick days and ban non-compete agreements. So Tim Walz is the package. When he laughs, he's really laughing. He's a joyous person. He has a wonderful sense of humor, and he's a fighter. He's a military man. He's Commander Sergeant Major Walz. So I mean, this guy is credible with veterans. My own son, is a veteran, and I often consult Tim on, how to make sure that my son gets treated with the respect that every veteran should be treated with. So he's the package, and I just think it's a brilliant pick, and it has it says a lot of good things about Kamala Harris.
So you like him? I'm
a fan. But let me tell you, he and I went to Congress the same time. We left Congress the same time. We went to statewide office. I was the Attorney General. He was the governor. We went through the pandemic together. We went through the George Floyd crisis and aftermath. He's the one who appointed me to prosecute that case. And I can tell you, and I don't think he would mind telling you, that he said, Keith, I'm appalled by this. Gwen and I are appalled by this. And I want you to take this case, and I want you to do your best. And I want you to achieve fairness here. And I said, absolutely, Governor. That's what we're going to do. So this is the guy that he is.
I think the first time I may have, and maybe the only time I have ever said his name on this program was when he made the decision. Let me just read from the local coverage of that decision. This is from the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. Quote, "This decision is one that I feel takes us in that direction and the step to start getting justice for George Floyd," Wallace said. Quote, "When I spoke to the Floyd family, they were very clear. They wanted the system to work for them. They wanted to believe that there was trust, and they wanted to feel like the facts would be heard and justice would be served." Facts, justice, and listening to the victim's family was how perhaps the national press first got to know him through his decision to appoint you. Just take me through that sort of pivot or hinge point in history, in the history of having justice for George Floyd.
Well, it was a tough time. It was the pandemic. This is May 2020. We didn't really have an effective vaccine yet. We were doing social distancing, and then this tragic situation happens where Derek Chauvin stands on George Floyd's neck for 10 minutes, and the world erupted because we all saw it. And when great leaders, when they deal with serious problems, they act effectively. And the governor said, "Keith, I need you to help step in here." And I'm like, "Absolutely, I'm here to do my duty." He was decisive. He was clear. He listened. I'm not sure that justice for the Floyd family would have occurred without Tim Walz, quite honestly. And then when things got out of hand in the streets, he deployed the National Guard. They approached the residents by demanding that there be order and brought the situation under control in an expeditious manner. But look, we had a tough situation. We've had them in, we've seen them in LA, Miami, all over the country. He acted decisively, and he helped bring order to the situation. And that's one reason why I am sitting here telling you that the guy is the real deal, and he's going to do great things for the country.
Someone whose perspective, I'm sure, is being sought by everyone everywhere. We are really, really grateful that we got a chance to talk to you. Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, thank you so much for being part of our coverage. Really great to talk to you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. You too. Up next for us, we showed you a little bit of what we've been talking about, some of Governor Walz's brutal and effective takedowns of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. When we come back, more on the striking comparison now on this sort of apples-to-apples choice that voters will have. One candidate's VP versus the other's VP. Much more on that next.
Here we are driving down the road, and all of a sudden, bang! Oh! Look at that. You know what we can do now? Go to SafeLight.com. They are the experts at replacing and recalibrating windshields.
If you get a crack in your windshield, there's only one choice.
Safe Light Repair! Safe Light Replace!
Hi, my name is Damian Clark. If you have both Medicare and Medicaid, I have some really encouraging news that you'll definitely want to hear. Depending on the plans available in your area, you may be eligible to get extra benefits with the Humana Medicare Advantage Dual Eligible Special Needs Plan. All these plans include a Healthy Options allowance, a monthly allowance to help pay for eligible groceries, utilities, rent, and over-the-counter items. The Healthy Options allowance is loaded onto a prepaid card each month, and whatever you don't spend carries over from each month. Other benefits on these plans include free rides to and from your medical appointments, and our large networks of doctors, hospitals, and pharmacies. So call the number on your screen now and ask about a Humana Medicare Advantage Dual Eligible Special Needs Plan. Humana, a more human way to healthcare.
Want to know a secret? More than just my armpits stink.
Facts. That's why I use Secret Whole Body Deodorant for clinically proven odor protection everywhere. So I smell great all day. All hike! And all night.
Secret Whole Body Deodorant.
Your record label is taking off, but so is your sound engineer. You need to hire.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Indeed Instant Match instantly delivers quality candidates matching your job description. Visit Indeed.com/hire.
My grandfather's run Meyer the Hatter for over 75 years now. He's got so many life experiences that he can share. Finding the exact date on Ancestry that our family business was founded was special to share with my grandfather. I don't get that moment every day.
We all know what it's like to worry.
to not know where our dog is gone. Say goodbye to that with Tractive. Follow every step and find your dog in no time. Set virtual fences, monitor their activity, sleep, and get health alerts all in one easy-to-use app with unlimited range and support in over 150 countries. Tractive, the GPS tracker trusted by pet parents worldwide. Save 30% for a limited time.
Get this thing off of me! You still haven't broken up with bad bras and gone to honeylove.com? Take your current torture device of a bra. It in no way fits your body, and the underwire
stabs me in the boobs constantly.
Not anymore, thanks to Honeylove.
Wow, there's no spillage and no gap.
And there's no underwire. Don't take it from me. Look at all these 5-star reviews. Women everywhere are breaking up with bad bras.
Can you do this? As early as your 40s, you may lose muscle and strength. Protein supports muscle health. Ensure Max Protein has a 30-gram blend of high-quality protein to feed muscles for up to 7 hours. So take the challenge. Ensure nutrition for strength and energy.
Right now, pet dander, skin cells, mold spores, pollen, and dirt are being sucked into your air ducts. Get cleaner air and system efficiency now with Stanley Steamer. Your air ducts aren't clean until they're Stanley Steamer clean.
Stanley Steamer gets your home cleaner.
Hey everybody, Tim here. 11 days till the election, but it's my pro tip of the day out on the road. I got to show you this. This right here is the headlight harness on a 2014 Ford Edge. Ford, this is unacceptable. It burned out hot on the connector. So for $7.99 at Napa Auto Parts here in the city, you can replace this. Just clip off the back, use some shrink wrap connectors on there, tape it back together and put it back in. It's about a 5-minute fix and you're back on the road safe and sound. So pro tip of the day, second one is get out and vote for One Minnesota. Get out and let's take this state in a direction we know it needs to go. Go vote.
Just a little taste of, man, the whole country's going to get to know. It may be a personal fetish. I love people that can, like, fix things and talk about fixing their own cars. I can't even open my hood.
He's like clicking and clack. It's like one of the Tappet brothers.
I love it so much.
It's a YouTube video, YouTube instructional video.
I love it. I love that. I watched that clip 3 times today. I know people are listening to the long-form interviews and the policy stuff. Not me. I watched the car videos. Let me bring into our coverage Tim Miller, former RNC spokesperson, host of the Bulwark podcast, MSNBC political analyst Tim Miller. Claire, Basil, and John are still here. Tim, your thought. I loved you were one of the first people sort of putting out the pros and the analysis. Take me through as the days worn on your thoughts about this selection.
Yeah, I don't know anything about headlight harnesses, not headlight harnesses. I haven't been to a Napa Auto Parts in a while, and so I do think that's one of the pros that I wrote about.
I love it.
Yeah, cards on the table. I prefer Josh Shapiro. I thought that somebody with a 61% approval rating in Pennsylvania was pretty appealing. But look, I think that what Tim Walz brings to the table that Shapiro really didn't was somebody that is authentically from the heartland, that can speak the heartland language, that was a football coach, that served in the military, grew up in rural America, won in a district, so he knows how to win here. He won in a red district in southern Minnesota, like on the Minnesota-Iowa border, that includes some of Rochester, but a lot of rural Minnesota. And so I think that is a big advantage. I think particularly as you look at a contrast with J.D. Vance, they did both serve in the military, but after that, J.D. Vance came back home, went to law school, went to work for a VC, made friends with a bunch of rich Silicon Valley tech bros, went to Hollywood, turned his memoir into a movie, and now he's trying to say he represents the people that he left. He left in the dust. Tim Walz served and then went home. Went back to the heartland, was a teacher, was a football coach, gave back to his community, knows how to fix a car clearly. I think that he will expose the phoniness of J.D. Vance's appeal to the Midwest in a way that maybe some of the other candidates didn't. And I think that's the biggest pro that I see for him, just looking at this purely as a political matter.
Yeah, I mean, Tim, I'm a huge, unapologetic fan of Josh Shapiro as Pennsylvania's Attorney General and its governor. One of the sort of hottest spots after 2020 was Pennsylvania, and he was steady and ran a sort of textbook coalition campaign for governor there. But if I understand Claire's reporting, my sense is that the vice president approached this process not finding another her for the ticket, but maybe finding some of what President Joe Biden left when he left the ticket. And I wonder what you think about that analysis.
Yeah, some balance. There's a lot of parallels between the Obama pick of Biden, really. You know, and I think that there is something to be said about somebody that's breaking a glass ceiling on the top of the ticket. Obviously, Obama being a first black, major party candidate, and then now Harris, a first black woman and of South Indian descent, to be able to say, hey, I want to pick somebody that gives off a different aesthetic, a different vibe, where maybe our values are the same. But, they can go into Green Bay, Wisconsin, and kind of speak the language. They've been to a Culver's before. They just they can talk about the Packers-Vikings game, right, in a way that feels authentic, and in a way that he's kind of demonstrated in his life that he actually really cares about the communities because of the way they give back to them. I noticed in that very first video that he put out, he used the words common good and compromise a lot. He said, I care about rural values. That means working together, compromising for the common good. I think that's his way of trying to reach out to that Obama-Trump part of the electorate that Joe Biden did well with, and maybe was a little bit more of a stretch for Kamala Harris.
Claire, you've been invoked. I want to bring you into this, and I want to read you some of what we expect to hear from Governor Wallace tonight in his speech, the first time the country will hear from him as Vice President Kamala Harris's running mate. He will say this, quote, Minnesota's strength comes from our values, our commitment to working together, to seeing past our differences, to lending a helping hand. These same values I learned on the family farm and tried to instill in my students. I took to Congress and the state capitol, and now Vice President Harris and I are running to take them to the White House. Donald Trump, he sees the world differently. He doesn't know the first thing about service because he's too busy serving himself. Those are some excerpts from this evening's remarks from Governor Wallace.
Yeah, this is going to be a campaign about freedom and aspiration and opportunity. We're going to be back to a very clear contrast between one party who wants to lift everyone up and the other one who wants to grind everyone down and tell everyone how America sucks and we're terrible and it's a hellhole and aren't we awful? It's quite a contrast, and I think they've got the winning side of this equation. And the other thing that we really haven't talked about today is the very big looming issue of women's reproductive health and freedom. Tim Walz comes to this with a particular background that I can't wait for the debate, because Tim Walz went public after the Alabama court decision telling people in Minnesota that he and his wife had gone through 7 years of IVF in order to have their daughter, and told that story, and from his own personal experience, how important it is that we protect IVF. And at the very same time, he was opening up about this very personal detail in his life. J.D. Vance was on the floor of the Senate voting no on protecting IVF in America. I mean, drop the mic. You can't have a better contrast in terms of where America is on this subject. And he's actually signed into law what I know Kamala Harris wants to sign into law, and that's a codification of Roe v. Wade.
It's a brutal issue for Republicans. They're losing statewide in places like Kansas on this issue. And he's, as Claire said, not just on the right side, but opening up about his own.
Well, that's what's so appealing about this, about Tim Walz, because, and I think Pete Buttigieg talked about this before, that for all of the hate that Donald Trump injects into this race, there's a policy solution for everything that he's addressing. And if you have a ticket that's actually interested in public policy, that has the ability to energize people because say, yes, I can get around that. That actually touches me where I live and touches my family. And that's what's so critically important. Is that hate is very powerful, that fear and that anger is very powerful. But what's even more powerful is a solution to the thing that you're concerned about. And that's what that ticket brings.
Matt Dowd talks about a gut candidate, a gut campaign. And I think sometimes Democrats want to stick just with the policy and the white papers. I mean, this is a gut ticket. Kamala Harris is speaking to people's hopes and aspirations. There are spontaneous organic chants at her rallies. They start yelling, "We will not go back." And they now have, someone else who sort of gets to people's guts.
Yeah, I mean, look, we were talking off camera a couple minutes ago about the Minnesota lineage here. This is the third Minnesotan to be nominated to be vice president. We've had two vice presidents from Minnesota in the Democratic Party, Hubert Humphrey and Walter Mondale, neither of whom then went on to become president of the United States, we'll note. But Hubert Humphrey's whole thing was, happy warrior. That's what he's most famous for. Happy warrior in the politics of joy. And in Tim Walz, you have that sense of him. We haven't seen, none of us have seen enough of him other than a lot of these cable hits that he's done over the last couple of weeks. But even in his affect he's a heart and a gut candidate, but also this kind of, there's a lightness to him. And I think that the happy warrior joy thing also correlates to something else, which is a word that everybody, I sound so superficial when I say it, but I think it's not a small thing in politics, which is fun. Fun.
Oh, 100%.
Fun.
It always wins.
Fun. Candidates win. Often people say the taller candidate always wins. Almost always the candidate who seems more fun wins. And he is going to be fun. Fun to watch. When he said the thing, J.D. Vance, about how none of my hillbilly cousins went to Yale, that's when I was like, oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah. You know who else is sort of tuning in, I think, our younger voters. I think there's something about our politics that have been so bleak, and they've been repellent to younger voters. And to join that part of the conversation, we have Democratic Congressman Maxwell Frost of Florida. I know the thing, though, that younger voters hate the most is older people like me telling them what works for younger voters. So erase everything I just said, and you tell me. I've been monitoring your post. You seem to approve of this selection. Explain.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this choice. And sorry for being in the ball cap. I'm going out and canvassing right after this because we got to get to work. We're so close to the election. But we're excited about this pick. And I'll tell you, Gen Z, young people generally online are also very excited. Oftentimes young voters get a bad rap. I feel like a lot of folks think we're not engaged, think we're not substantive. But I'd argue we are engaged, and we're perhaps one of the most substantive young generation of voters that our country's ever had. Number one, having the highest youth voter turnout in the history of our country in the last few cycles, but also asking the real questions. It's not just about how old someone is. It's about, are you for us? What are you going to do on the climate crisis? What are you going to do to end gun violence? What are you going to do to promote peace? What are you going to do to make sure that everybody has the resources that they deserve? I always joke around that the age of the single issue voter is going away. It's dying because young voters, when you ask them what they care about, they don't tell you one thing, they tell you several. They tell you 10 things, they tell you 12 things, because they see how all these issues are connected. And when you look at Governor Tim Walz and his amazing agenda that he passed through the Minnesota State Legislature with just a very slim majority. I mean, just think about this. The Republicans have a slim majority in Congress. They've done nothing. It's been one of the most unproductive Congress since the Great Depression. Yet Tim Walz had a slimmer majority in Minnesota and got more done. He got universal school lunch for every child in Minnesota. He was able to pass good labor protections. He was able to get so much money for affordable housing and transit. And so this is what we needed on this ticket. We have Kamala Harris, who's been a champion, who's been exciting young people. And now with Tim Walz, we see he's somebody that really has appeased this entire party. I never thought I'd agree with Joe Manchin on something like this, but I do agree with the statement Joe Manchin put out. We are excited about Tim Walz, and this is the energy we need. And I agree with what was just said. I think oftentimes we as Democrats dismiss the politics of love and the politics of joy. I'm going to be honest with you. This is something that the Republicans have really leaned into, not on love and joy, but on the politics of vibes. It's why in the state of Florida this November, we will codify abortion rights. But yeah, a lot of those same voters will vote for Donald Trump. And the question is, what's going on? It's because Trump is about the politics of the vibe of freedom. We have to actually be about freedom. And when we do that with love and joy, it cuts straight through the BS that the Republicans are trying to feed people. That's what Tim Walz does. And just huge kudos to our vice president for picking such a great pick here.
Congressman, I need you to say more about vibes. I feel like you're onto something revelatory.
Yeah, I mean, this is again, I always like to talk with people about this. This is part of the reason why when you poll the state of Florida on the issues, we are a progressive state. The last 3 cycles, $15 minimum wage. We got voting rights to people with previous felonies. We were able to get medical marijuana, but yet a lot of the same voters will vote for politicians who are completely against all the things they're for, expanding Medicaid, right? So the question is, what's going on? And it's the Republican Party with that red hat. And, you know, for them, patriotism is bald eagle, beer, and flag. And that's it. And I love beer, and I
That which cannot be made in a lab or concocted by a pollster or a strategist. Really invaluable insights. Thank you so much for sharing them with us. Tim Miller, Claire McCaskill, Basil Smykel, John Heilman, thank you for being part of our coverage on this another extraordinary day in the 2024 presidential. I don't know how many more times I can say that, right? They're all extraordinary.
Talk about an extraordinary day tomorrow. You know what day tomorrow is?
What?
The day Nicolle Wallace is on the In Politic podcast with John Heilman.
That's right.
That's an extraordinary day.
That's right. In terms of our schedules and meshing, that's true. All right, we have much more of our special coverage of the Harris-Walz kickoff campaign rally in Philadelphia. Stay with us. Quick break. We'll be right back.
The dentist's office just lost my crown, but that's not what concerns me. It's that they have my social security number.
The DMV that hasn't updated their computers since they were invented.
Next.
Has 2 forms of my ID. And the online pet store that was breached? They have my payment information.
Think of all the places that can expose your info. LifeLock monitors millions of data points for identity theft. If there's a problem, we fix it. Guaranteed.
Introducing MSNBC Premium on Apple Podcasts. Get early access and ad-free listening to Rachel Maddow's chart-topping original podcasts, exclusive bonus content, and new episodes of The Rachel Maddow Show and Morning Show ad-free. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts. MSNBC Live Democracy 2024, Saturday, September 7th in Brooklyn, New York. Join your favorite MSNBC hosts at our premier live audience event to break down all that's at stake in this historic election. Visit msnbc.com/democracy 2024 to buy your tickets today.
It's not about hate. It's not about collapsing in. The golden rule there is mind your own damn business. Their policies are what destroyed rural America. They've divided us. They're in our exam rooms. They're telling us what books to read. And I think what Kamala Harris knows is bringing people together around the shared values, strong public schools, strong labor unions that create the middle class, health care that's affordable and accessible. Those are the things. I think this is going back to the bread and butter, getting away from this division. We do not like what has happened where we can't even go to Thanksgiving dinner with our uncle because you end up in some weird fight that is unnecessary.
Hi again, everybody. It's now 5 o'clock in New York. A new poll released just this morning found that 71% of Americans had never heard of or had no opinion of that guy, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. That is all about to change.